In this use case, we're going to be talking about this insane number that you're looking at that you might actually be thinking that isn't real. $128,000 that we were able to save this client in a short period of time of 22 days. This affected their marketing department directly, and we're going to talk you through the problem they had. So how did they end up in this situation? The pain they were experiencing by not solving the problem, the impact it was having on the business, both financially and time, and then the solution itself. So we're going to walk you through step by step how we implemented this in Salesforce so that you can see exactly what our approach was and how we were able to solve it, screenshots and what that looked like. And then overall, we want to show you what the improvement was from the business. So when we were done implementing this solution, what did the business see from it? Why was it helpful for them? So jumping right into it, let's talk about, again, crazy number, $128,000 in 22 days. How did we even get in this situation? What was happening for this client? And is this something that's just like a one-off, or do we see this a lot? Answer that question directly. We do see this happen a lot. And the reason for that is we are working with companies that are a mid-market sized company. That's usually 100 to 300 employees or so. And whenever you are in this range, I worked with tech companies in this range all the time before I became a consultant myself, and same with our team. And what happens a lot of the time is you start getting around 100 employees or so. Maybe you get some kind of funding. So now you have some money that you can start spending. And what you do is you start hiring these experts, or you start hiring people that come in that have two main skill sets, okay? One is going to be obviously what you want them to do. The other one I saw more often than not is that you're going to try to find somebody that has an attitude of get it done. And it's a great way to be able to approach early stage startups like this, because there's a lot of stuff that maybe you don't really have the whole process fleshed out for. And so if things come up, they're really adaptable. These people really just take it upon themselves to get stuff done. So it's great that they're having people like that come in. You need people like that definitely at this size. But the issue is that a lot of the times when they first start getting that funding, they start hiring out their C-suite, or they start hiring out maybe they're like director level people. In this specific use case, that was the situation. We had a director that was getting paid a handsome amount, and this person is doing low level work. So they're doing things that, yeah, it's awesome that they're getting it done for us. It needs to get done, but we don't necessarily want to be paying somebody this high salary to do low level work that maybe we could outsource to somebody else. So how do they get in that problem? Well, this is where it's common because, let's just use the example of the name Steve. Let's say we hire Steve. He comes in as our marketing director, just like this person was. And we want that person to be able to, obviously give a strategy on marketing, but there's other problems that arise in this situation. We had HubSpot, we had Google Sheets, and we had Salesforce. So you have three separate places where we're housing information. And what that causes is a lot of chaos between the three. You don't really know what numbers are right. There's missing data between the three. Maybe HubSpot has the info. Maybe Salesforce has the info. Maybe those Google Sheets that I'm filling out manually have the information. And so you're kind of in this situation where it's like, man, I got to update the information because it has to be accurate in all these places. Usually it starts off with a good intent of, I can get this done quick, so I'm just going to do it because I don't want to go spend time to tell somebody else. And so they start doing that and nobody has a problem because, again, it has to be done by somebody and they can do it quickly, so they just let them do it. The issue becomes, I guess, larger, you could say, when they get to the point where they now have money or they know the process and they're still hanging on to it. They're still doing it themselves because, again, they use quote unquote, it's just easier for me to do it because I know how. So you have now this person that's potentially getting paid, close to $200,000. They're usually anywhere from like 150 to 180, getting close to that 200 range at that level. And especially a marketing director here in the US, I looked it up myself. The average salary is around 180 that they're paying for that kind of person. So potentially around that same price. And that's a high hourly rate, obviously, if you break that down. So if they're spending really any time doing stuff that could be outsourced to somebody else, they should, because it's a lot of money coming out of their funds that they could be spending on obviously way more important things. At that level of the business, you want to be spending a lot of that on like ads and process improvement and things that could propel your business forward, scale you guys, not just entering data into fields, right? Somebody else can do that. So that was the issue here. We have these three separate platforms. We got to fill out data. We got to kind of do some low level work. It has to be done, but we don't really want to be paying somebody at a C-level there to do that kind of work for us. Okay. So high level pay, low level work. That's the issue they have. The pain they're following is actually a pretty big deal. Yeah, there's a lot of money going out of their pocket financially, but there's actually a lot more issues that we started seeing once we dove into this issue. So we get pulled into the project. The first thing you're always going to do is kind of start monitoring. So, tell me about this problem, go sit with the person, see what their process is. Why do they do it this way? So you start monitoring these people so that you can get a good idea of what kind of problems they may not even be aware of that we could also solve at the same time. So again, we have an expert here that we've hired, somebody that's amazing at marketing. They're doing low-level work like filling out fields and making sure data is all filled in on these 3 platforms, right? And the Google Sheet one, just so you have context, is introduced because they don't trust data inside of HubSpot. They don't trust data inside of Salesforce. So they start up a third one, which this isn't uncommon. They start up a third one with a Google Sheet just so they can manually track it. Again, nothing wrong with the business with this. And this is why it's common, because anytime, even when I worked full-time for companies, I saw this all the time. You get someone in there, what you probably should be doing. You should hire somebody to do this, but maybe you just haven't got around to it, or it's not the reality quite yet. So you have somebody else do it. So it's not bad by any means that these companies are doing it. Even if you're doing it yourself, it's bad. You want to try to cut that cord as quick as possible, because it's just a huge amount of money you're going to waste if you keep going down that same path. Okay. So none of this use case is obviously to try to say that anybody was in a bad position, because that's what it is at times. These businesses are just doing the best they can with the resources they have until they can get something better. And then sometimes it is what it is. And so this comes up frequently, which is why we're calling it out. So they have these experts doing low level work. It's a poor use of the resource, right? You want that person doing what you hired them to do, not something that you could just quickly train someone else on how to do. When you're also doing this kind of level of effort, or you have a lot of things you're filling out manually, you're going to have typos. It's inevitable. And you're also going to create bad data. So if I have a robot that never misses and is 100% accurate versus somebody that's going to type something in wrong, read a number wrong, remember something wrong, obviously you're going to have a higher risk of a human doing that versus an actual robot or automation in Salesforce. So high amount of human error that's also happening here. Hours of time to compile data. This takes a while to do. When you're looking at several platforms, you may not even be an expert in all 3. You got to make it work. It takes time to just look this information up and get the help that you need to compile all this data and get it all filled out. So it takes a lot of tedious time. Again, it's not hard work. It's crucial. It has to be done, but it's just time suck. It takes a lot of time to do that. So what does that lead to? Delayed business growth or delayed business decisions. Either way you want to put that. You have this issue where now it's taking, again, Steve, all this time to run an analysis for you. And inevitably, this is what happens. We saw this time and time again with this company and other companies we help solve this problem for. Let's say Steve, we put all this money into a campaign for marketing, since we're talking about marketing. He compiles all this analysis from all these 3 separate places, and he brings it to the C-level people or the CEO, whoever it might be. And he tells them, hey, we spent all this money. We thought it'd do well. I promised it'd do well, and it didn't. And here's the numbers. Okay, the number one response that somebody's going to have in that position that we see over and over again, that someone could do the data wrong because there's typos. There's 3 platforms. So then you start going into this one down here called gut feelings. You start saying, let's go back and look at Salesforce. Are we sure we did this? Are we sure we looked here? Did you pull the report this way? Did you look at this filter? Are the filters correct? I started looking at all these things. So they push back, creating more time for them. But also, again, it's leading to this delay because you can't just bring a report, look at hard numbers, and say, this is what it is. It didn't perform well. Inevitably, someone pushes back, and then, you got to do this process all over again. So it slows you down, which if you have slow growth, you scale your business slowly. And this gets even scarier if you are a company and if you have any kind of funding, you have investors, you have people that care about what their money's doing. So you have, typically like a board, you have somebody else in charge, somebody else telling you what you guys need to be working on with expectations of what you're going to be doing with your money. Sometimes those expectations have huge repercussions, right? Like that could be taking someone like the CEO out of charge. That could be putting other people in place. It just depends on what obviously was agreed to. The point though is there's pressure here to scale it, to get a return on that money that was put in. So you have expectations now. This really, it doesn't become an option. And so anything that you're doing to slow this down, this brings a lot of pressure, which brings sometimes drama and other things into the business that you don't want. So any way that you can avoid this makes it all better for anybody that works at that company. I won't go through this one again, but making gut feeling decisions, okay? What I meant by that is when we show these numbers because we think it's wrong, we use words like I just used. You're going to say, I think, I believe, maybe we want to check again. I don't think that's right? Like you're going to start using kind of phrases like that because you don't believe that what they're presenting to you is correct. So you start making decisions based off of what your beliefs are, not just the numbers. And that's completely wrong. Not what we should be doing, right? Like we want to be basing decisions that are strictly on numbers. So when I pull a report, that's the number, and that's what we have to make the business decision on. If we do it off beliefs, we're eventually going to go down the wrong road with assumptions and other things that aren't pushing the company in the right direction. So that comes in the incorrect reporting and analysis that you see over here. So massive amount of pain that you're going to see. Impact that you see as far as financial and time management, huge. Okay. And here's how we come up with these numbers. I spoke about it a little bit earlier. We're looking at the average salary for a marketing director. That's 186 here in the US. Okay. 89, almost $90 an hour that you're going to be spending on that person. And then we're looking at the time it takes that person. So now we have the numbers of what they charge per hour. Well, how much time is this taking? Well, in this case, when you have 3 different platforms, quite literally, we're looking at almost half of their day is spent doing tedious things between the 3, whether that's filling out fields, that's checking automations are working, that's pulling some kind of report, that's doing some kind of analysis. All those things that, maybe we justify in the beginning as part of their job, right? But it's really not. It's not really part of their job. It's not why you hire them to do those things. And it just starts getting added into it because you don't know how else to solve the problem. You don't know there's automations out there to do that. So you think it's kind of part of their job when it's really not. So they spend a lot of their time doing this, and that's what we saw over here too. And that comes out to a lot of time per month. So not only are you spending, 165 working days every year for this person at that level to just do simple stuff, you're also wasting this massive chunk, 128 grand a year if you go down this route, right? So you want to solve this and cut that cord as soon as you possibly can so that you can get this number down quite a bit, right? Like you want to get somebody that is way, 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 way cheaper to do this process. And in our case, right, there's a lot of this we can automate. So 1, either hiring someone that can immediately help, obviously, but then 2, you don't even want to have a hire if it can be automated in Salesforce, which in this, it can. So you want to hire someone to come in like ourselves, come in, we automate this, we get the problem solved. And that way, everything, all your data is centralized. You'll probably hear us talk a lot about that in these other videos as well that we put out. But the more you have it centralized, the better you can make business decisions. You want whatever the CRM is. In our case, it's always Salesforce. But if you don't use Salesforce, whatever your CRM is, make that the brain of the company. Meaning, you want all your decisions to be based in one platform. As much information as you can get in there, that's what you should be doing. If you get to these enterprise levels, there's some different decisions to be made there, obviously. But at our level in mid-market, definitely. You want it as a brain of your company and all the decisions in there so that you can make all decisions off of one platform, not all these different ones, okay? So that is the impact they're having. That's how we got to these numbers. That's how we were able to figure out how much we were saving for them. Let's talk about the solution now. The solution always follows a 4-step process. The 4-step process is us doing a discovery, a build of what the solution will be, testing that build, and then deploy stands for getting that stuff activated and live for them to actually use the solution we give them. So discovery, we are going to take the time, and here we looked at like what tools are you using, what platforms were involved, and then we're going to monitor, as I said. So we're going to sit with those people, sit with that person, sit with Steve, right? And go through what this person actually does on a day-to-day basis so we can figure out what's repeatable. Does he do this, every week? Whatever it is, doesn't matter. If he does it every time and he follows the same process, it's repeatable, meaning we can automate that process for them, saving all that time. So we go into our build. In this specific case, where there were these 3 platforms, they were using Pardot. If you're not familiar with Pardot, it's basically HubSpot for Salesforce. It does all their marketing data. So they were using that, but they were kind of weaning off of it, getting ready to move into HubSpot for a number of other reasons. And so what we wanted to do is make sure that we integrated HubSpot and Salesforce together. And that was also going to cut our third guy out, which was this manual tracker they were using in Google. They mainly created it just as a gut check for themselves. They trusted so little in Salesforce and HubSpot that it's natural that they wanted to create another place that they were manually checking to see if it lined up. So making sure that everything is automated in both these platforms and they talk to one another is going to cut that third one automatically. You know that these numbers are accurate now, okay? So this HubSpot to Salesforce integration is pretty common. The reason it's so common is HubSpot in recent years too has come out with a ton of more automations, and I would say becoming a little more robust than it used to be. And so what we see a lot at this range is there's a lot of companies that will use HubSpot for their marketing data instead of using Pardot like this company did as well. And so the integration between the two is a really common one. You always want to make sure they could talk to one another. Again, their strategy here was use HubSpot to capture some, UTM parameters and marketing data and stuff that's important, like, what website were they on when they converted to a lead? What webinar did they go to last? Are they reading our newsletter? When did they go to our website? That kind of stuff. They're getting that easier and they felt like better from HubSpot. So they create all these forms, they capture that in HubSpot, it captures it for them. That's great. But then 95% of your other business is inside of Salesforce still. So what we want to do is we want to capture it there. That's fine to use it as a tool. Let's still push it into Salesforce to be the brain of the company. So we have that data in Salesforce if we wanted to pull reports and all that kind of stuff, right? So we're kind of leveraging here HubSpot as like the tool because it, in their opinion, did better for what they wanted. And then we're using Salesforce over here as, again, like the brain of the company where we're going to make decisions. So these two integrate. We created some automations of both sides, depending on what was needing to be done there. But we did some automations of how to capture that data I just talked about in HubSpot, and then also what to do with it inside of Salesforce once it got there. So we wanted to automate that. So again, it's not just capturing data and then it's like, now what? Obviously, you wanted to go to the right places. You want it to be on the right reports. You want it to be in the right fields, like we talked about at the beginning here. So those automations came in clutch for us so that we could take that work away as well. Custom mapping as well, that was a big piece of this. Once you integrate these two, the biggest thing you want to do is you want to say, okay, we got this in HubSpot. What do we want to do with it now? Where do we want to push it in Salesforce? What field does this go to? So custom mapping, obviously we'd always take care of as part of the integration. What does that look like? Well, there's some screenshots here if you haven't been in here before. Here's one pulled from HubSpot. This is what this will look like. You're in your little HubSpot here. Once you have these two connected up, this is like what your integration is going to look like for the most part. Okay, so you have these different tabs up here. Contacts, they name stuff differently. We won't get all into that right now, but contacts is usually where you're going a lot of the time. Contacts is leads in Salesforce. You can use it interchangeably with contacts, but most of the time people would call contacts in HubSpot's leads in Salesforce. So you're usually mapping this quite a bit because you're getting data from how people are wanting to do business with you, which is a lead, and then you're pushing that into Salesforce. So in here, we have control over that, right? We can control all this stuff, sync rules, how they map, when they should sync, all that stuff. So that's what that piece looks like. The automation section is going to look like this inside of HubSpot. So you have similar looking to what a flow looks like inside of Salesforce. So really similar automation. And you set these things up to do, obviously, automated tasks for you. So if we know when someone goes to our HubSpot form and fills out the info that we want to mark that person as a potential lead, or we want to push that information over to a certain manager to follow up with, or whatever it is that you want to do, that's when you pull these automations in. You create those so it does it automatically for you. You can do that same thing inside of Salesforce, okay? So all that's taking place. These two are always the same for us. We do these last two, which is testing and deploy. Testing, if you're not familiar with a sandbox, what we do is we have a test environment, and you can create these sandboxes in HubSpot too, and they allow you to basically take a copy of your information and then put it in a testing environment so we don't screw anything up, okay? So we do that over here so that we're staying safe, we're not screwing with your real data. Last thing you want to do is have something deleted on accident. And then UAT stands for user acceptance testing. Basically kind of a fancy way to say, whoever requested this, we want them to sign off on it too. We want them to come over here and tell us, hey, I tested it. It works well. It works the way I want it to. We're good to go. And that leads you into that approval. So the testing phase is really important, right? Because we're now operating outside of our own silo. Like, I built it. I did the discovery. Great. Now you guys tell me, was I accurate? Do we need to tweak anything? Are you giving me the green light on this? This helps us stay on the same page and make sure whatever we build for you, you can be confident in and it's reliable, right? It's a scalable solution. That brings us over to the deploy section. Deploy just means we're going to make it live for you. We're going to activate whatever we built for you. Okay. So production is the opposite of sandbox. Sandbox is testing. Production is live. So we put it into your live environment, your live Salesforce, your live HubSpot, so you can actually use it. We activate it and then we test one more time just to make sure everything works the way we tested it over here. Okay. So all those things take place, help this business be able to save all that money, $128,000 by cutting this person out. We didn't have to use them the way we were to do all this manual information. Okay. And we were able to get that done. Working days for us on our side was 22 days, is really quick. The reason it took a little bit longer is when you do these integrations, there's sometimes different security measures that you have to fill out. So these ones they can take a little bit longer, not necessarily on our end, just as a business decision is what can kind of delay these, because you're checking things like, in this specific case, they're a health company. So they have a lot of health information that can't go to certain places per audits, per licenses they have. It has to say secure. So there was a lot of pre-work we had to do with HubSpot and different business users to make sure that whatever we were building, IT, right, was staying safe. So things like that will come up. You're also using two different platforms. So sometimes if you have to reach out to HubSpot support, they're slow, or Salesforce is slow. So this one takes a little more time on that end, but actual working days are really, really quick. So if this is interesting to you and you want to use us, just keep in mind, the better prepped you are as a business to have those conversations already done ahead of time, the quicker we can make this. So this would have been even quicker had we been able to reduce some of that, right? Or make the scope of this project a little bit smaller. But this is the 22 working days that we put into it. So could have been quicker, but still really fast, less than 30 days, which is still amazing. Most of the time, people are doing these for months. So this is usually a really long process as far as work that the Salesforce agency will have to put in. Reduce costs, make more money, scale better and faster. Those are three things every business wants. We're able to do that, obviously, for all three of these. And then I like to use this ratio at the end because this gives you a better perspective on what this company did. They essentially gave us, as the Salesforce consultants, $1, and then we handed them $12 back, meaning you paid me the equivalent of $1, and then the amount of money that I was able to save your company in 22 days is like me giving you $12 back. So I don't know anybody that wouldn't want to do that, right? If you gave me $1 and I gave you 12 back, you'd be doing that all day. So that's why it leads to such a great relationship with most of our clients we start off with, right? Because if we can do this in 22 days and save you that kind of money, and then do it again and again and again and again, obviously, you want to stay as long as you can to get your Salesforce all optimized and maintained by somebody that can do it this efficiently. So if that's interesting to you, if this is something that seems to be on your mind with a HubSpot integration, which is, again, very common, hit us up at Simple Salesforce, here on the website, any of our social links you might be watching this on. Me and my team, we offer a free business consultation with one of us for 30 minutes. We want to make sure we're a great fit for you first before we do anything. And then if we are, we can move forward to getting started almost immediately with you after you get a contract signed. And we can get in here and do this in 22 days or less, as we're claiming here, to really see a massive impact for your business. So again, hit us up. We look forward to seeing you guys on our Calendly, and we'll talk with you soon.